everybody, I'm Amber Ryan and welcome to my channel. And finally we are at June's TBR wrap-up. Wow, almost halfway through the year. It is, I believe, July 2nd when I'm filming this, so wow, time is just flying by this year. And if you have came from any of my other videos, you may notice my hair is a different color. And it's freshly dyed, so my scalp looks a little orange, so ignore that. But yeah, I wanted to go red. I'm about to go on a vacation in New Orleans, and I'm living life. I'm excited. So right now is a good time to film because I'm just full of such excitement and I'm ready to go. So I have a lot to talk about in this video, so we're just going to get right into it. But yeah, I just wanted to let you guys know what was going on, and let's get started. Okay, so for the month of June, I was having this reading slump in the first half of June that carried over from May. So for like the last half of May, I believe, I was going through this really bad reading slump, and it carried over for the first half of June. I think the first couple weeks. And then finally, in the last couple weeks of June, I started picking my books back up, and I instantly picked up my pace, and I think I got all but 2 books that was on my TBR read that month that I just didn't have enough time to get to after all that. So I read 5 out of the 7 books for June. Starting off with Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry. Gonna struggle with words, I guess. And this one was 294 pages long, and I gave it a 4-star rating on Goodreads. Next, I actually listened to the audiobook on YouTube by Penelope Heaven for Nancy Drew, The Clue in the Diary. This one is 174 pages long. Listened to the audio of it, and it flew through. I listened to half of it one day and half of it the next to get through it. And I think I actually did it on a weekend, so worked out very well for me. And I did end up giving this one just a 3-star rating on Goodreads. Wasn't my favorite. Moving on. Okay, and next I read The Hollow by Jessica Verde. And I did give this a 3-star rating on Goodreads. It is 509 pages long, I believe. And yeah, I was expecting more out of this one, and I will go into detail about that and later on in the video with the clip I talk about each of these books. So yeah, I have a lot to say about this one, so be looking forward to that. And next I read Dead Lake by Darcy Coates. She is my favorite horror author, so I do talk a little bit about this book later on. And I think I had quite a bit to say about this one as well. I did give this one a 5-star rating on Goodreads, so it was a pretty good one, and it was a short one with 243 pages, so not bad. Alright, and last but not least, I read The Diviners by Liba Bray. This was the last one I read, literally down to the wire. I finished it on the last day of June, stayed up part of the night to finish it. Couldn't put it down, but I did only give it a 4-star rating on Goodreads. I haven't even filmed the clip of me talking about this one yet. I'm about to. And it is 468 pages long. Pretty good of a read though, and I think I will be adding this series to my TBR, so definitely a success with this one. Okay, so all in total of the 5 books that I read this month, I had 2 3-star ratings, 2 4-star ratings, and 1 5-star rating out of these 5. And the last 2 I didn't quite make it to. And in total, I read 1,688 pages for the month of June, which is just wild to me. But I did have 2 thicker books, and I had 2 shorter books, and then an average book, I think, an average length book. So not bad, I don't think. So 2 books that I did not get to, I will go ahead and include here, was Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil by John Brandt. It was supposed to be my true crime read. And I did not get to The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, and this was supposed to be a romance read, and as you can tell, it was a thicker one, so I didn't quite make it in time to this one. But you will see these two at a later day, I am quite sure, because I still want to read them, and I will get to them eventually. I just didn't quite make it into June. So, and yeah, so that was my month of June, and now let's get into me talking about the individual books in real time after I read them and how I feel, and yeah, that's the most fun part, so let's get into it. It is Thursday, June 22nd. It's obviously nighttime. It's been a kind of long day, but here we are. So I realized I haven't really been filming this month's wrap-up video the same way I usually do. Basically, I got really behind on reading because of the reading slump I had. And so I haven't been filming as much as I usually do. Usually when I would read a book and finish it, I would come and sit down and film the day of finishing that book, to where I can give you like the live reaction of my emotions and everything. And there's a glare, so I'm going to take these off and you guys are going to be blurry. Anyways, so usually that's how I film my wrap-up videos, but this month, because I kind of started a little late because of that reading slump, I was still dealing with that at the beginning of the month, so it took me a while to finally get into my TBR for the month, and so luckily I have been making progress with it. But yeah, so as you can tell, there's only like a little over a week left of June as at the time of filming this, so I really need to get the ball rolling, that's for sure. So we're going to talk about 3 different books in this one clip, because that's how many I've already read, and I just finished one of them today, and then I realized I don't think I sat down and talked about the other 2 that I've already finished this month, so yeah, so we're just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Hopefully that doesn't confuse anybody. I'm sorry for, I keep swapping the styles of the way I film things, but I'm still trying to figure out like my format of doing these, so, but yeah, so let's get into it. So I believe the first book I read this month was Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. And I actually quite enjoyed this book. So everyone has been ranting and raving about this book for a while now. A sequel is about to come out. I don't actually know when it's going to come out. It's something in Bone Dust. I don't even know the title. I can't remember. But I do know there is a sequel coming out for this one. And I will probably read the sequel. And I think I gave this one either 4 or 5 stars on Good. Okay, the sequel is called Bookshops and Bone Dust. And I don't know if it's supposed to be like a prequel book, because on Goodreads it's saying Legends and Lattes number 0. So I'm wondering if it's actually going to be a prequel to this one. I think what happened is it had, Goodreads was having problems reading Legends and Lattes that day. But anyway, so I think I actually gave this 5 stars on Goodreads. Now it did take me a while. Now this book I did start at the beginning of the month, and I got halfway through it really quickly. And then basically work got really busy. So I didn't read as much, and I was going through the slump. I was still dealing with that. So I didn't finish it until about mid-June, where I read the last half of it. And I think, and then quickly after, I did an audiobook of this other book I finished. So, but yeah, so I did finish reading this one. I think I did give it 5 stars on Goodreads, and it was a pretty good read. I kind of regret not reading it more like closer together, in one sitting, because it was a cozy, type of read, and I feel like this would have been a great one to read like in fall, like, if it was, it feels more like a seasonal thing. Just a cozy, good fantasy read is what it is. And so and I think at the time of reading it, I was just really stressing myself out. There was so much going on, and I think I was just really overwhelmed. And as I like to say, sometimes I get oversensitized, to where, like, I'm just overstimulated is another word that people will call it. Like, even sounds like kind of trigger me a little bit, so it's just a little much. So I was dealing with that at the time, so I didn't quite enjoy it, I think, the way most people have been enjoying this book, and it has been going around. There was also like a bonus prequel story in this that I started to read, and I didn't bother with the rest of that, but I didn't consider it as an actual part of the book. So but yeah, I may get the sequel. We'll kind of see. We'll play it by ear on that one, but I did enjoy it for what it was. It definitely had the D&D vein going through. The Dungeons and Dragons was definitely there, and it really felt like that. And it could be because I've been watching a lot of Critical Role lately, and I have never really been into that stuff till recently, so maybe that's why it was on my brain, but I'm pretty sure that's what was intended with this one anyways. So, but yeah, it was very interesting, and I just wished I had enjoyed it more in the moment. But after having time of thinking about it, I just really wished if I had read it in the fall, maybe, at least, when the trees were changing colors and everything, I may have enjoyed it more. Or even during winter, when I'm looking for a cozy read, have a cup of hot cocoa and bundled up in blankets and just read a good book while it's raining. It's that kind of book that you want to reach for. So 5 stars for this one. And yeah, so next was The Clue in the Diary, Nancy Drew. This is the 7th one in the series. I did have a goal to finish all 50 of these this year. And obviously I haven't made much progress because there's just been so much other stuff. But yeah, these are really short reads for me, and I have found someone on YouTube, I think her name is Penelope Heaven on YouTube. She kind of does like voice recordings and audiobooks of the Nancy Drew books, and she kind of picks and chooses out of order which ones she's gonna do. But luckily, excuse me. Luckily, I think a couple years ago she did this one, and I also used her video for the last book, which I think was Mystery at Redgate Farm, I think. So yeah, I'm really enjoying just listening to her, because her voice is like, it's a Nancy Drew voice. It's the perfect for reading these books. So I've just been doing the audiobooks for these, which is kind of sad because you're missing that vintage look, that vintage style, and all the illustrations. But it didn't take long at all to just listen to this one. And yeah, it was kind of nice because I listened to half of it on a Sunday, and then I think it was either Monday or Tuesday, I went back to work and I was listening to the other half while I was working. It was just super easy, super chill. I didn't really care much for this story, and I can't even remember much of it at this point. That's how much it didn't stick with me. And I think I felt like that with the last one too. Like, I've enjoyed listening to them in the moment, and then afterwards, after a few days, I don't remember what they're really about. So I'm hoping, we're about to get into some better ones. I've already made it through a couple of the more well-known Nancy Drew stories, like The Hidden Staircase and Mystery in the Old Clock, and also the Mystery at Shadow Ranch. So those are the more well-known ones. So I'm kind of waiting to get to more of the other ones, like maybe the ones that have games after them. That would really help out because I do watch a lot of Gab Smulders playing the Nancy Drew games. So I'm kind of, looking forward to getting to more of those. So I can enjoy them maybe a little bit more. But yeah, I didn't quite enjoy this story, and like I said, I don't remember much of it, so that's all I have to say about that one. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the book I finished today. So this one has actually taken me almost all week to finish. It was a longer one. So it was 509 pages long. And it is The Hollow by Jessica Verde. So now what I didn't know when I bought this book, and I quickly discovered when I started reading this book, is it was published in 2009. And the reason I quickly gathered that it was a 2009 book is the main character's fashion choices really threw me off. And then she clearly had a flip phone. And she would talk about, you know, electronics that were very known for that era, like CDs and DVDs and that kind of vein. So I was just, it threw me off for a while, you know. It's kind of hard to get over that, you know, reading it now, especially when you're not expecting it to be based in 2009. So apparently it is a part of a trilogy, and apparently this trilogy was on the best-selling New York Times, and it was a well-known series at that time, and it had, I think, a decent following. However, what I didn't realize is once I got halfway through this book, I started Googling like all these questions I had about it and wondering, you know, how well known it actually is like in the current day and everything. And apparently it did have a following. And a lot of people were saying, I was reading reviews and everything, because I was like debating whether to DNR it or continue. And of course, I'm at the halfway point, so I was like, did I waste my time, or should I continue? Like, what should I do at this point? And, because I was kind of, you know, I was enjoying it, but at the same time, I was having difficulties connecting with the characters, and eventually, I discovered in the reviews that most people actually didn't really enjoy the first book of the series. They said the sequel is a lot better. And I'm thinking this may have been like a debut book for this author maybe, and that's really the only thing I can think of, because there's just a lot of scenes and a lot of like detailed parts of like mundane activities that the character's doing, like taking a bath, like all the details of making herself a bath, or all the details of her making a cup of tea, or all the details of her making a batch of cookies, or all the details of her going away from the location of the story to visit all of her relatives during the holidays, and explaining all of these activities that she's doing with them and how much she hates it, and then coming back and dealing with what the story is supposed to actually be about. And the story itself was actually supposed to be about her, what it's said to be based off of is her like trying to solve the mystery of her friend's death, and there was hardly any of that at all. So I mean, this book did make me want to cry several times, I'm not gonna lie. It is very much about dealing with grief of her losing her best friend and basically her only main friend, and, you know, her going through life without her afterwards. She is a junior in high school. So it is very emotional, but you can just tell that this was based in 2009, and just the way the writing was, it was a little difficult, and it was basically just filling pages is what it felt like the author was doing. So, but I did see in reviews that the sequel is a lot better. And honestly, this book did leave in a cliffhanger, so I really do want to see where the story goes next. And so I am definitely thinking about getting the sequel to this one. And I actually thought about going ahead and buying the other two books, honestly, and instantly just jumping into them, because I am intrigued, because I love all of the Legends of Sleepy Hollow inspired stuff. I didn't really care for the original book, like the original story, but I love all of the inspired stuff, like the movies. I have read, I think, 2 or 3 other books inspired by that story that I quite enjoyed. So, you know, that's the main reason I got this book. And I didn't realize it was even a well-known trilogy. I didn't know what it was really about. But it had a lot of great potential. It had the good bones. So I really just wish there was a modern, updated version of this trilogy. Like, if the author ever wanted to, like, get on that, I'd be happy to read it. I'd be a beta reader. But, I'm really torn on what rating to give this book. So I think I'm going to give it either 3.5 or a 4-star rating, because I don't want to give it a full 5 because I did have so much grievances with it. Like, I had so many misgivings about it, and yeah, it did leave me wanting more. So that does say something. However, you know, I wanted more of the, like, romance part of it and more of the mystery solving. There was just a lot of in between, a lot of nonsense that didn't need to be there. It wasn't edited down. Maybe she just needed a better editor. I don't know. But it didn't seem like there was good editing, you know. There wasn't someone to pull the reins back, you know, saying, oh, maybe the scene doesn't need to be there. It's just filling pages. It's, you know, it's not even attached to the story. It's not giving anything. So, and I did see several other people, the reviews that I read had the same issues about this book. Of course, I didn't know that until after I started looking stuff up halfway through the book. So, and honestly, if I had seen that stuff before I started reading, I wouldn't have even bothered. But I am glad I did read it, you know. It had potential, and yeah, so I'm hoping for more with the sequel. I am going to give the sequel a chance, I believe. And like I said, it was published way back in the day, so even if I don't like it, it's not like going to be a big wound. You know, it's not going to hurt too badly, but I still want to give it a good try, because I'm really hoping the story actually, you know, goes somewhere, because there just wasn't much going on in the first one. So that being said, it'll probably be a 3-star rating if I'm being honest. But yeah. It is June 26th, Monday. It is late. Yeah, I just want to talk about Dead Lake by Darcy Coates. So I started and finished this entire book today. Yeah, so it's called Dead Lake, and half of the book, I'm tired. Okay, so let's talk about Dead Lake by Darcy Coates. So what I wasn't expecting is that there's actually a bunch of short stories in this book. There are, I believe, 5 short stories. Dead Lake, Whose Woods These Are, Mannequin, Hitchhiker, and Bellamy. So there are 5 short stories. Dead Lake took up half of the book, and it was actually a really good story. I quite enjoyed it. And I will talk a little bit about each of these stories briefly. But Dead Lake specifically, I really enjoyed. And then the last story, Bellamy, I also really enjoyed. The 3 in between, I could really care less for, honestly. But anyways, let me tell you my thoughts on each of them. The main one that the book is called, Dead Lake, that took up half the book, was a really good story. So basically this artist named Sam, she is going basically through an artist block. She has just lost her mother to cancer, and she has about a week left to get ready for this big exhibit, and it's going to be her first one. It's going to basically launch her career as an artist, so it's a very big deal. However, she is going through this art block right now, and so her uncle, basically the only surviving family member, has offered her his cabin by this lake to stay at for a week, you know, and it's by a lake, has great views, and basically it's a place for her to unplug. You do not get any phone service. There's not even any electricity or running water there. You know, it's basically a well water and, you know, having to use a wood fire, and basically, you know, really toughing it out, living off canned food and everything. So it was basically a great way for her to unplug, get secluded, and basically, you know, work without any distractions and focus on trying to get through this art block and make I think 12 paintings was the goal for the big exhibit, and finally get around to doing that. She only has, you know, a little over a week left to, you know, get all of that done and ready for the exhibit. So she goes out to this cabin, and right away she starts seeing this scraggly man basically hanging around the property. Now the thing is this cabin is so secluded. All the surrounding land is owned by the government, so there's not even close by cabins, and there's a couple hiking trails that come close, but not many people are supposed to use those trails. And apparently, as she quickly discovers, the main trail that leads to the cabin, called T1, is actually cordoned off. It is blocked because hikers have kept disappearing off of this trail and were never found. So a few were in the beginning, but eventually all of them would disappear and would never be found. And so they cordoned off the trail, and she didn't know any of this when she went out there. So basically she starts sleepwalking / sleep painting. She has slight memories of her getting up in the middle of the night and painting these grotesque paintings of this man, and very violent, gorish paintings. And so by the end, all of these paintings basically form a story and is telling her what is going on out here. And it's such a good story. I really quite enjoyed it. I feel like I flew through that one, and I just really enjoyed it. And of course, being, you know, a person who loves to paint and loves to draw myself, and kind of being an artist myself, you know, I kind of, like, it made sense to me, you know. It's kind of cool to kind of be in the shoes of that character. And yeah, so I don't want to give too much more away of the story. I definitely highly recommend you reading it for yourself. Like I said, this is a short book. There's 5 stories in it. It's very quick to go through. It took me I literally got through it in a day. So highly recommend. I am going to give this book 5 stars, even though 3 of the stories were a little iffy in my book. But yeah, so that was Dead Lake. The next short story was Whose Woods These Are, and I didn't really care for that one. It kind of reminded me, it was like a mix of, I don't know, it kind of reminded me of one of her, Darcy Coates' other books, Hunted, and I really enjoyed that book, Hunted. However, this one isn't exactly like it, but it did kind of remind me of it. Basically, there's this monster in the woods that is killing people, and no one returns from the woods, and this girl who used to camp there with her family when she was little, her father has died, and she was in his memory decided to go camp there, and come to find out it's all fenced off, and all the trees and plant life is looking very suspicious, very dead-like. And there's basically this creature in the woods, and she quickly is you know, in a fight for her life. And it's a very short story. It's not very long. I think it's maybe 20 to 30 pages long, if that. I think it was one of the shortest stories. And it was alright. I wasn't in love with it. And next is a story called Mannequin. Now, this one is a story I could definitely see Markiplier not enjoying. If you have a fear of mannequins, that story is not the one for you. Or maybe it is. Turn off the lights and have a flashlight and read that one, because you'll have a blast. That one's also a very short story. I think it was 20 to 30 pages long as well. And quick, easy read. But yeah, so 2 of the stories didn't have that great of an ending, and then others, the rest of them had happy endings. So it's kind of a mixed bag of, you know, whether you're going to be happy with the ending or not. And I just wasn't very happy with the ending of Mannequin. It made sense, and it really reminded me of Tales from the Dark. That is the, yeah, Tales from the Dark, with the Midnight Society. So it definitely reminded me of a story that would have been told on that show. So yeah, it was very simple, to the point, and it kind of made me laugh. It made me think, you know, I was just like, this could be a little short video game. So, next story was Hitchhiker, and I don't really want to give too much away on these shorter stories, because like I said, there's not too much to them. They're very simple, but they are effective, and they are worth reading. I just didn't quite enjoy those three, but Hitchhiker, yeah, it was very simple. It was also a quicker read, and it was a shorter one. But yeah, so the last story was Bellamy. And I will go in a little bit more detail with this one as well, like I did Dead Lake, because I quite enjoyed this one. It was the last story, and it was a great one to finish off with. It started off strong and ended strong, and that's all that matters to me. That is why this book is getting a 5-star rating, and plus it's by my favorite horror author, so how could I not? But Bellamy was basically about this children's asylum that has since been shut down, and this woman who was one of the last remaining children to be taken in there is returning as an adult to this abandoned children's asylum, and is basically rehashing old memories that she has forgotten or like really buried in her subconscious. And she's basically had nightmares her whole life of this place and of her twin brother that she lost there, and she is suddenly having all of these memories rushing back to her, and she discovers that there was more, you know, that happened in her childhood that she didn't recall, like all of these children going missing, and the two caretakers of the facility, one who she thought was very evil and one who she thought was really nice. So it's definitely, you know, the fight of good and bad. And it was just very interesting how it all played out. I really loved the setting, and the way Darcy Coates writes is she's very atmospheric, she's very descriptive, and she really pulls you in to the scenery. She gives you a lot of background, she gives you a lot of detail, and it's like you can very vividly picture it in your head as you're reading through the stories and through her books. So I really quite enjoyed going through this setting and this particular story with her writing style, and that's what really made that story worth it. And and that one also had a good ending, so it made it worthwhile as well. So Dead Lake and Bellamy were my two very favorite stories out of this book, and I do highly recommend you reading it for yourself. So yeah, 5-star rating for this one. Got it done in one day. So I was planning on reading this on Friday, I think in the last clip I said. So basically what happened is Friday basically was just too busy, and then Saturday I went floating on the Buffalo National River, went canoeing, and so yeah. So I did not have time to tackle it until today, and luckily because I read it all in one day, I can quickly move on to the next book and hopefully actually maybe finish my TBR on time. A little iffy. I'm going to be really cutting it close, I think. But yeah. So, I am filming this clip a few days after I actually finished this book. But I want to talk about The Diviners by Liba Bray. So, and I don't know if I'm actually saying that name right. It may be Liba. I'm calling it Liba Bray. So this book was floating around, I believe, about 3 years ago when it came out. And I actually watched part of Meg with Books. I watched part of her video, and she had done a buddy read with this one or something a few years ago. And so I actually watched her video, and I kept seeing it in the background of all her videos, and I had already bought it when I started watching her. So I was very interested in it, and I know it's a full-blown series. I think there's like 4 in the series, and then there's 2 that are either spin-offs or that people just don't care about. I don't know what's going on there. And this book had a lot going on. So I did give it a 4-star rating, I believe. Yeah, I gave it a 4-star rating on Goodreads, and the reason it wasn't a 5 is because there was just so much going on. There was too many characters leading the story. It kept switching from different points of views, different, like the way it was written, it was kind of all over the place. And I mean, it made it work, and it was a good book, but I didn't quite like the small font. This book definitely could have been split into maybe 2 books, maybe, or could have been a little bit more editing down that could have happened. It was a really good read, but yeah, that was pretty scary going into a big book with little font, so yeah. It did take place in New York in 1926. I do love reading in the 1920s era. That's kind of my favorite. That's kind of my favorite area to like read about and see, and you know, all of that. So I did quite enjoy that, and I think that's really what kept me going. That's what kept me around, is that it took place in the 1920s. And there was a bit of a love triangle going on by the end of it. But yeah, and this book, for some reason, really reminded me of the London Seance Society by, I believe, Sarah Pinner. So, and I just read that one recently, I think a couple months ago, so I think that's why it was so fresh in my brain. But this one kind of reminded me of that, and it wasn't what I expected the book to be. It was good, but there was a lot going on, and I feel like there should have just been a little bit more editing down. It was kind of all over the place. So there were many main characters, basically. The big main one that was the lead was Evie O'Neill, and she was a flapper girl. She was kind of reckless, and she is kind of a psychic. She can hold objects from somebody and basically read their memories from this object and tell their secrets, and it basically gets her into a lot of trouble. And she's kind of a brash, selfish person, and yeah, so that kind of, I didn't really like some of her character traits. But there are several other characters that have led off that are also considered diviners, who have these special abilities in the 1920s, and this big darkness has come out. I don't really know how to explain this book without giving anything away. There's so much that happens. Anyways, I do recommend you reading this for yourself if you haven't already. It is a few years old. I am planning on adding this series to my TBR list officially. I am interested to see where this series is going to go. And this was only the first one, so hopefully, I bet it gets better as it goes. But this is one of those ones you can tell it's the start of a story, and there's just a lot of storylines going on at once, and it kept plucking us from one and going to the next, and it kind of gave me whiplash in that way. So, but for some reason that style of writing just works for this book, and I can't understand why, but it does work. And I just kind of wish each storyline had their own book, because I feel like we're not getting the full story out of it, you know. It's kind of all over the place, but it was a good read. I do recommend it, and I gave it a 4-star rating. I think that's all I want to say about this one. But it was worth the wait. I am kind of glad I'm glad it was the last one I read for June, and I'm glad that I, you know, made myself actually read the whole thing, because I was ready to DNF it, and I didn't. I stuck it through, and I finished it on June 30th, and in the late hours. And I'm proud of myself for sticking to it and actually reading it, because it has been on my shelf for 1 to 2 years, I want to say. So I've had it for a while, and yeah, it was a good read though. So I do recommend it, and let me know what you guys think down in the comments below.
I get this feeling, I wanna run away, hit the highway and then Don't wanna watch it fade away in the rearview mirror. Won't get lost cause I've been really off track. Lately been running